The most recent shooting happened around 8 o'clock this morning on Union Avenue near Oakdale Street. Police Chief Eric Winstrom says officers found a woman dead after neighbors heard gunshots and called police. A suspect took off but was found a short time later on the city's northeast side. Police have not released his name. Officers were working to locate children who live in the home this morning to make sure that they were safe.
Looks like this is likely a domestic incident. At this point in time, we have not identified the victim, but it's a very strong possibility. I'd be surprised if this wasn't domestic in nature.
What would you do if the person you love the most was hiding a truth that could destroy you? What if that truth wasn't just about them, but about your entire life being a lie? Alicia Lofton had no idea that the man she stood beside at the altar just 6 months ago would be the one to end her life. A devoted mother of 3, she believed in the promise of a fresh start, a chance to build a future filled with love and trust. But what happens when the man you trust becomes the person you fear? Her story isn't just one of heartbreak, it's one of deception so deep it led to unimaginable violence. Alicia had uncovered something about Marcus Lofton, her husband, that he never wanted the world to know. It was a discovery that turned her life upside down and sealed her fate. She wanted peace, a way to move forward without anger or retaliation. She didn't seek revenge. She didn't demand answers. She only wanted freedom. But freedom came with a price. And for Alicia, it was the ultimate one. What pushed Marcus to the breaking point? Why did the truth Alicia uncovered lead him to commit such an unthinkable act? And how did a marriage filled with promises of love and partnership spiral into betrayal, fear, and ultimately, murder? This is the story of Alicia Lofton, a story of love turned to betrayal, a secret that couldn't be hidden, and a life stolen in the most brutal way. A story that leaves us with one haunting question: how far would someone go to silence the truth? Let's begin. If you're captivated by true stories that reveal the unexpected depths of human nature, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest uploads. Dive with us into the mysteries, the heartbreaks, and the gripping tales that remind us how fragile trust can be. Join us as we uncover stories that linger long after they're told. Let's begin. Alicia Lofton was a woman of quiet strength, someone who carried the weight of her world with grace. Born into a close-knit family, she grew up with a deep sense of loyalty and responsibility. Even as a young girl, she was the one others turned to, a natural nurturer with an unshakable resolve to protect those she loved. Her dedication only deepened when she became a mother to 3 beautiful children. Life hadn't always been kind to Alicia, but she faced every challenge with resilience. Her children were her greatest motivation, the reason she pushed through heartbreak and disappointment. For years, she worked tirelessly to build a life for them, often sacrificing her own happiness to ensure their stability. Her previous relationship had left its marks, a man she had trusted and loved had shattered her faith and partnership. But Alicia didn't let that pain define her. Instead, she focused on healing, raising her children, and holding on to the belief that she deserved a love that would honor her strength and devotion. When Marcus Lofton entered her life, he brought with him the promise of something new. Their meeting seemed almost like fate. His charm was magnetic, and he had a way of making Alicia feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. Marcus quickly became a presence in her world, not just for her but for her children. Their romance was fast and intense. Marcus swept Alicia off her feet with grand gestures and a confidence that made her believe this time would be different. Friends described their relationship as a whirlwind, a spark of hope for Alicia after years of hardship. By February 2023, the couple stood together at the altar, exchanging vows of love and loyalty. Alicia's children stood proudly by her side, their mother finally finding someone who seemed to want to build a life with them all. To those looking in, this was a fresh start, a new chapter in a life that had known its share of trials. But not everything was as it seemed. Marcus, for all his charm, began to show a different side once the honeymoon phase of their relationship faded. His mood shifted unpredictably, and arguments that once ended in apologies became more frequent. Alicia, always hopeful, believed they could work through the cracks in their marriage, but it was becoming harder to ignore the strain. Alicia's life had taught her to weather storms, but this time, the storm was brewing closer than she could have imagined. What she didn't yet know was that Marcus carried secrets that would unravel everything she thought she knew about him and put her life in unimaginable danger. Her journey with Marcus was supposed to be a new beginning. Instead, it became the first steps toward a devastating end. Marcus Lofton's story began long before he met Alicia, shaped by a world that demanded conformity and silence. Growing up in a conservative household, Marcus learned early that there were parts of himself he could never reveal. His upbringing taught him strength, but it also instilled fear of rejection, fear of judgment, and fear of being truly seen. Before Alicia, Marcus navigated a series of relationships that never seemed to last. He presented himself as confident and self-assured, but beneath the surface was a man at war with his own identity. The struggle to reconcile who he was with who he was expected to be consumed him, leading to choices that would echo long after. By the time Marcus met Alicia, he had mastered the art of deception. To the outside world, he was the picture of a charming and attentive partner, but inside, he carried secrets that weighed heavier with each passing day. These weren't just personal struggles, they were secrets that would shape his relationships, his decisions, and ultimately, his downfall. Though he vowed to leave his hidden desires behind, Marcus's internal battle never truly ended. His fear of societal judgment loomed large, driving him to live a double life. On the surface, he was a loving husband, devoted to his new wife and her children. Behind closed doors, he pursued affairs with men, a reality he was determined to keep hidden at all costs. Alicia, ever hopeful, believed in the man she had married. She chose to trust him, dismissing moments that might have raised suspicion, an odd text message, unexplained absences, or a distance that seemed to grow without reason. She believed in their vows, in the family they were building together, and in the promise of a better future. But Marcus's facade began to crack. The pressure of maintaining two worlds, one built on lies and the other on secrets, pushed him into a spiral of anxiety and control. For Alicia, these moments were fleeting but unsettling, a shadow that hung over their relationship but was never fully acknowledged. Marcus's hidden life wasn't just a betrayal of his vows, it was a betrayal of the trust Alicia placed in him. It was a secret he would do anything to protect, even if it meant destroying the person who loved him most. His struggles, his choices, and his deception would soon collide in a way that no one could have anticipated, setting the stage for a tragedy that would forever alter both their lives. Alicia Lofton wasn't the kind of person to snoop. She believed in trust, the foundation she'd tried to build with Marcus. But trust, she learned, can sometimes be a veil, hiding truths that refuse to stay hidden forever. It began as something small, something seemingly insignificant. A notification on Marcus's phone caught her eye, a name she didn't recognize, accompanied by a message that felt too familiar. Alicia brushed it off at first. After all, wasn't she the woman he had chosen, the one he vowed to love? But doubt has a way of growing, even in the most loyal hearts. Days later, another moment of unease, a missed call, hurriedly dismissed by Marcus, with an excuse that didn't quite sit right. Alicia's instincts told her something was wrong, but she pushed those thoughts aside, unwilling to entertain the idea that the man she loved could betray her. Then it happened. One evening, Marcus left his phone on the kitchen counter. Alicia wasn't searching for answers, but the phone buzzed, lighting up with a message she couldn't ignore. The words weren't innocent, and they weren't meant for her. What she found next unraveled everything. Messages filled with affection, plans for secret meetings, and an unmistakable intimacy that shattered her faith. The name attached to the messages? Marcus's best friend. Alicia's world spun. Her heart pounded as she pieced together the reality she had been blind to. This wasn't just a betrayal of their marriage, it was a betrayal of the life they had built together, the trust she had placed in him, and the dreams she had fought so hard to hold on to. Her reaction was a mix of devastation and clarity. She didn't confront Marcus immediately. Instead, she sat with the knowledge, allowing the weight of it to settle. She cried for the man she thought she knew, for the life she thought they had, and for the future she now realized could never exist. When Alicia finally confronted Marcus, her voice was steady, though her pain was palpable. She didn't scream or accuse, she simply presented the truth. She told him she knew, and that all she wanted now was a way out. She deserved peace, and she was determined to find it. Marcus, however, was anything but calm. At first, he laughed, brushing off her accusations as paranoia. But as Alicia pressed forward, his demeanor changed. His defenses rose, his voice grew louder, and his desperation became evident. He begged her to stay, insisting she had misunderstood. When that failed, he turned to manipulation, blaming her for prying into his private life. But Alicia refused to be swayed. She stood firm in her decision to walk away, to let Marcus live his truth while she reclaimed hers. What Marcus couldn't accept was the loss of control. Alicia's quiet strength, her refusal to be caged by his lies, was something he couldn't tolerate. Her knowledge threatened the carefully constructed image he had spent years building. This wasn't just about a marriage ending. For Marcus, it was about protecting a secret he would do anything to keep. And for Alicia, it was the beginning of a fight for freedom she didn't know would cost her everything. Their confrontation was more than a turning point, it was the spark that would ignite a devastating fire, one that neither of them could extinguish. For Alicia, the betrayal was painful, but it was the realization of Marcus's growing volatility that turned her heartbreak into fear. The man she had once trusted began to reveal a side of himself that was both controlling and dangerous. It started with arguments, ones that escalated quickly and ended with Marcus raising his voice, his words cutting like daggers. He wanted control over everything, where Alicia went, who she spoke to, and even her interactions with her own children. She noticed how he would hover, his temper always just beneath the surface, ready to erupt at the slightest challenge to his authority. As the weeks turned into months, his behavior became more erratic. There were moments when Marcus's anger turned physical, a shove during an argument, a grip on her arm that left bruises, or objects hurled across the room in fits of rage. Alicia's once vibrant spirit began to dim, but her love for her children kept her strong. By May 2023, Marcus crossed a line that couldn't be ignored. One argument spiraled out of control, leaving Alicia with physical injuries that forced her to seek help. For the first time, she involved the authorities, a step she had long avoided out of fear of escalating his wrath. Marcus was arrested, and a restraining order was issued, barring him from contacting her. It was a pivotal moment for Alicia. Though she had endured so much, this time she refused to look away. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore, she was fighting for her children, ensuring they would not grow up in the shadow of Marcus's unchecked rage. Alicia took steps to reclaim her life. She began the process of filing for divorce, a decision that required immense courage. She sought legal advice, reached out to her support system, and began to rebuild a sense of security for her family. Her focus shifted to creating a future where her children could thrive, free from the chaos Marcus brought into their lives. Despite the restraining order, Marcus continued to loom like a storm cloud over Alicia's efforts to move on. He would send messages through mutual acquaintances, attempts to manipulate her into letting him back into her life. But Alicia stood firm. She had drawn a line, one she would not allow him to cross again. For Marcus, the loss of control was unbearable. His anger grew with every step Alicia took toward independence, every move she made to distance herself from his influence. What he couldn't see was that Alicia's strength wasn't just defiance, it was survival. The tension between them had reached a boiling point. Alicia's resolve to protect herself and her children was unwavering, but Marcus's desperation to maintain his grip over her life was building toward a breaking point. What Alicia didn't know was how far Marcus was willing to go to regain control, and just how much she would have to sacrifice to escape his grasp. On August 17, 2023, it was a day like any other, or at least it seemed so at first. Alicia Lofton had begun her morning in the usual way, tending to her children and preparing them for school. Her focus remained on creating normalcy for her family, even as the weight of her ongoing divorce loomed over her. The sun had barely risen, and Alicia had a list of errands to run, each step part of her plan to move forward. She had spoken to her lawyer earlier that week, finalizing the next steps in the divorce process. It wasn't easy, but Alicia was determined. Marcus, however, had different plans. He had been trying to contact Alicia for days, leaving messages that grew increasingly desperate. That morning, he arrived uninvited at her doorstep, his presence a stark reminder of the turmoil she was trying to leave behind. Alicia hesitated before letting him inside. She wanted to believe that perhaps this time, he was here to talk reasonably, to accept the inevitability of their separation. But the moment Marcus stepped into her home, his demeanor made it clear this wasn't a peaceful visit. The argument began almost immediately. Marcus's words came fast and sharp, accusing Alicia of destroying his life, of wanting to humiliate him. He begged her to reconsider the divorce, but his pleas quickly turned to demands. "You can't do this to me," he said, his voice trembling with anger. "You're not going to ruin everything I've built." Alicia remained calm, her resolve unshaken. She told him the truth, this wasn't about ruining his life, but saving her own. She had no intention of exposing him or his secrets to the world. She simply wanted to be free. But Marcus couldn't hear her. To him, the divorce wasn't just an end to their marriage, it was a threat to the carefully hidden life he had constructed. He feared the whispers, the judgment, and the possibility that Alicia's departure would bring his secrets into the light. As Alicia stood firm, Marcus's anger boiled over. His voice grew louder, his movements more erratic. He couldn't accept her defiance, her refusal to stay in the box he had built for her. As the argument escalated, Marcus's demeanor shifted from desperation to fury. In a moment of rage, he reached into a drawer and retrieved a handgun, Alicia's own firearm, kept for protection. Brandishing the weapon, he attempted to intimidate her into compliance. Alicia's eyes widened with fear, yet she maintained her composure, pleading for the safety of her children and herself. Sensing the imminent danger, Alicia made a split-second decision to escape. She dashed toward the bedroom, locking the door behind her in a desperate bid for safety. But Marcus, driven by a volatile mix of betrayal and rage, forced the door open. As Alicia scrambled toward the window, attempting to flee, Marcus raised the gun. He pulled the trigger, once, twice, 3 times, each shot echoing through the house. Alicia collapsed to the floor, her life extinguished in an instant. The sound of gunfire shattered the morning calm. Neighbors, startled by the commotion, would later recount the chilling echoes that pierced the air. Alicia's lifeless body was found near the home, multiple gunshot wounds marking the tragic end of her courageous attempt to escape. It was the end of Alicia's journey and the beginning of a reckoning for Marcus. A day that started with hope and determination ended in heartbreak and irreversible tragedy. The life Alicia had fought so hard to protect was taken from her, leaving behind a void that no one could ever fill. The aftermath of Alicia's tragic death was marked by chaos and urgency. The sound of gunfire had shattered the quiet of the neighborhood, prompting panicked calls to the police from witnesses who heard the commotion. Within moments, flashing lights and the wail of sirens converged on the scene, bringing first responders to what would become a haunting crime site. Officers arrived to find a house steeped in eerie silence. The front door was ajar, and the disarray inside told a story of struggle and desperation. Outside, Alicia's lifeless body lay near the edge of the yard, her attempt to escape marked by the final, devastating moments of her life. Evidence of the confrontation was everywhere, overturned furniture, shattered glass, and the faint scent of gunpowder lingering in the air. What was missing, however, was Marcus Lofton. He had fled the scene moments after pulling the trigger, leaving behind a trail of destruction and unanswered questions. The search for Marcus began immediately. Officers worked swiftly, interviewing neighbors who reported seeing him leave in a hurried state, his face etched with panic. As investigators pieced together the timeline, it became clear that Marcus's flight was not one of remorse but of fear of the consequences now barreling toward him. Within hours, Marcus was located miles away, attempting to hide in a relative's home. When police apprehended him, he offered no resistance. Instead, he launched into a desperate attempt to justify his actions, framing the murder as the result of a heated argument that spiraled out of control. His words, however, could not erase the mounting evidence against him. Investigators uncovered damning details. The weapon used in the crime was traced back to Alicia, but witnesses confirmed that Marcus had taken possession of it during the confrontation. Messages and calls leading up to the day of the murder painted a picture of a man unraveling, desperate to keep his secrets hidden. Forensics tied every detail back to Marcus, his fingerprints on the gun, the trajectory of the shots, and even the door he had broken through in his rage. The digital trail left by his phone revealed his erratic movements before and after the crime, showing a man spiraling into desperation and ultimately resorting to violence. As investigators delved deeper, Marcus's motive became chillingly clear. He had killed Alicia not out of passion but out of fear, fear of losing control, fear of exposure, and fear of the truth she now held over him. The arrest marked the beginning of a long road toward justice for Alicia, but it also left behind a lingering question: how had it come to this? How could a man so determined to protect his secrets destroy the one person who only wanted to move on in peace? The investigation's findings would soon come to light, revealing a story of betrayal, desperation, and the tragic cost of Marcus's unrelenting need to silence the truth. The loss of Alicia Lofton sent shockwaves through her family, leaving her 3 children grappling with a reality too cruel to comprehend. They had lost more than just a mother, they had lost their sense of safety, their anchor, and the future she had fought so hard to secure for them. Each child, in their own way, struggled to process the violence that had stolen their mother from them. The older ones carried the burden of understanding what had happened, while the youngest could only sense the absence of her comforting presence. The laughter that once filled their home was replaced by silence and questions no child should ever have to ask: why did this happen? Why couldn't she stay? Family members rallied around the children, stepping in to fill the void as best they could. Grandparents, aunts, and uncles worked tirelessly to provide stability, but no amount of love could fully heal the scars left by such a brutal loss. The community, too, came together, offering support and standing as a reminder that Alicia's story would not be forgotten. While Alicia's children and loved ones tried to rebuild their lives, Marcus faced the consequences of his actions in a courtroom. The trial was swift, the evidence overwhelming. Witnesses recounted his controlling behavior, and investigators presented the chain of events that led to Alicia's murder with chilling clarity. Despite the gravity of his crime, Marcus showed little remorse. In his statements, he painted himself as a victim of circumstance, attempting to justify his actions as the result of emotional strain. He blamed Alicia for leaving, for exposing the fractures in their marriage, and for what he called her betrayal of their vows. But the jury saw through his facade. The cold, calculated nature of the crime, the weapon, the confrontation, the pursuit, left no doubt about his intent. Marcus was sentenced to life in prison, with no chance of parole, a judgment that brought some measure of closure to those who loved Alicia. Even with justice served, the weight of Alicia's absence lingered. Her children would grow up carrying the memories of their mother and the pain of her loss. Her family would forever mourn the life cut short by senseless violence. The story of Alicia Lofton is a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked rage and control. It is a story of loss, but also of resilience, a testament to the strength of a family determined to honor her memory and rebuild, even in the face of unimaginable heartbreak. Why do people like Marcus feel the need to hide their truth? Society often imposes rigid expectations, creating a world where authenticity can seem impossible. For Marcus, the pressure to conform, to present a version of himself that fit within societal norms, became a burden he carried silently. But silence has a way of becoming destructive, especially when built on a foundation of deception. His choice to live a double life was more than just a betrayal of Alicia, it was a betrayal of himself. The fear of judgment, the desperation to maintain an illusion, and the refusal to be honest created a chain reaction that led to unimaginable tragedy. Alicia's story highlights the devastating impact deception can have on relationships. Love and trust are fragile, and when broken, the consequences ripple far beyond the individuals involved. Marcus's lies didn't just destroy their marriage, they destroyed lives. From Alicia's story, we are reminded of critical lessons. Trust and communication are the bedrock of any relationship. Without them, cracks form, and those cracks, left unchecked, can grow into chasms too wide to repair. But it's not just about trust, it's also about protection. Alicia's tragedy underscores the urgent need for stronger measures to safeguard victims of domestic violence. No one should have to live in fear of the person they once loved. No one should lose their life because someone else couldn't accept the truth. Alicia Lofton was more than a victim. She was a devoted mother, a loyal friend, and a woman who wanted nothing more than to find peace and independence. Her legacy is one of resilience and strength, a reminder of the courage it takes to stand up for yourself, even in the face of overwhelming fear. But her life was cut tragically short by the very person who vowed to protect her. Marcus's inability to accept himself and his attempts to control Alicia's future led to a devastating end, leaving behind a trail of heartbreak that will never fully heal. So we ask, how many more lives must be lost to lies and betrayal before we learn the true value of honesty and trust? How many more stories like Alicia's must unfold before we take action to protect those at risk? Alicia's story is a call to reflection, a call to empathy, and most importantly, a call to change. If her story moves you, let it inspire a conversation. Share it, discuss it, and raise awareness about the importance of living authentically and the need to protect those facing domestic violence. Let us honor Alicia's memory by ensuring her story becomes a catalyst for change. And if this story has left an impact on you, please consider subscribing to our channel to hear more stories like hers, stories that remind us of the strength of the human spirit and the need for justice in a world too often marked by tragedy.